Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to another Chem Complete lecture. And in today's lecture, we are going to continue our study of alkene synthesis. And for this lecture, we're going to look at alkene cleavage, which is a type of oxidation most commonly using ozone. So you see in the title there, it says ozonolysis. There is another oxidation reaction we'll talk about at the very end of this lecture using potassium permanganate, but these types of alkene cleavage reactions are what we're going to take a look at today, coming up on the channel right now. Okay, thank you so much for choosing Chem Complete for learning today. Remember to head over to chemcomplete.com. We've got lots of available free resources for you in order to help you with your studies. So let's get started today with alkene cleavage. Specifically, we're going to take a look at ozonolysis, and then again we'll wrap up with another type of oxidation reaction that we'll look at briefly. So the ozonolysis is a very powerful oxidizing reaction. So keep in mind, we've talked about before, especially with hydrogenation, that oxidation and reduction in organic chemistry really refers to the adding of hydrogens, if you're talking about reduction, or the adding of oxygens, if you're talking about oxidizing. So because this is going to be a powerful oxidizing reaction, we're going to be adding oxygens as we break apart this alkene or we cleave it. And we are going to produce carbonyl fragments. So a carbonyl is a C with a double bond O, and it is the host to a large number of functional groups, carboxylic acids, aldehydes, and ketones, to name a few. And those are the ones that we're going to be taking a look at, or that will result from this reaction that we look at here today. So as always, we like to get started with our basic overview. So if I have a generalized alkene, double bond with the pi electrons, and I subject it to ozonolysis. So there's a second step to this, but right now I'm just going to write ozone here for a general ozonolysis. And what we will see as a result is that the carbon-carbon double bond will split apart, and in place of it will be two carbonyls. So I'll have this, and then I will also have whatever the other corresponding carbonyl is. Okay, they might be identical or they might be different to one another. But one of the easiest ways when you approach this reaction is whatever you have here, and then you've got your double bond, and you have here and here, you are going to, from a just visual standpoint, split this double bond down the middle and separate it out, right? So if this is side 1 and then this is side 2, you're going to get whatever was on side 1, and you'll get whatever was on side 2 here. And that is how ozonolysis is going to work overall. Now, what about some of the intermediate steps leading up to this? So ozone, O3, is used to form what is called an ozonide intermediate. And so to give you an idea what this looks like in terms of the mechanistic details, if I have a alkene and I expose that alkene to the ozone, remember I said that there were two steps. So the ozone is actually going to form this intermediate, and this looks something like this. So you've got the carbon with the bonds for whatever was formed, okay, the oxygen here, and then this is going to come down and connect to the other carbon after another oxygen. So you've got two oxygens here, then you've got the carbon here, that has whatever was present there, and then this comes together with this oxygen right here, okay? So you'll notice there's three oxygens there, but this is the intermediate that you would get here as far as the first step of this reaction. And again, this is known as an ozonide intermediate. These are very reactive intermediates. They can actually be quite explosive and reactive. And so we don't leave this for an extended period of time. You're going to see in the next step here, the ozonide is immediately treated with zinc metal in acid to produce the carbonyls that we saw in that opening step there. So let's take a look at an example in terms of what this would look like as a whole, and then we want to talk about some of the different scenarios that we could come across here. So if I have an alkene, and we're going to go ahead and say that this alkene is attached to a ring, and then we also have just a carbon with some methyls coming off here, right? So here's our alkene, and this alkene is exposed to ozonolysis. So in the first step, I treat it with ozone, And then in the second step, I make sure that I add zinc metal, and I also make sure that there are acidic conditions present. Well, what I'm going to end up with is I will get a clean split of that alkene, where the first double bond portionality will be right here, right? That's what it looked like as I kind of, if I'm breaking this apart down the middle here. And then I would also get acetone. So I would get the CH3 group, right? This would be connected to the C double bond O, and then CH3 here. So again, if you want to kind of number this or split them in half, you can kind of view this right here as this is side 1 and this is side 2. So here is product 1 and here is product 2. Now if the alkene again is symmetrical, you're going to have two of the same product, which is very possible to get. So let's take a look at some of the different types of things we could expect. So results here in the ozonolysis are going to depend on the alkene substitution pattern of the starting material. So up first, if we have a di-substituted alkene, we're going to get two aldehydes. So let's use some relatively simple examples just so we can see what we're talking about here. So if I've got a di-substituted alkene, meaning I've got this one here, let's go ahead and we'll just put a methyl group down here. And I am going to keep these so they're not perfectly symmetrical because I want to be able to differentiate the products. So let's just put an ethyl group up here, and we will make it trans in terms of the stereochemistry, and then we will have a hydrogen down here. So here's di-substituted. I've got two alkyl groups around the alkene. If this reaction were to take place, so I do ozonolysis and I follow up with zinc in acid, what I would end up with is two unique aldehydes in this case. The first one would be what we would call the acetaldehyde, or the CH3 with the aldehyde group. And then the second would be the one that has the ethyl portionality, right? So I would have something that looks like this, and these would be the two corresponding pieces. And you can see that, again, if I split this apart, this would become an aldehyde due to the hydrogen here, and this would become an aldehyde due to the hydrogen here. Right? So hopefully that makes sense, and you can see that from a symmetry standpoint. Now, tri-substituted, you're going to get one aldehyde, and then you're going to get one ketone, because we don't have two hydrogens at this point. One of the carbons will be fully set with substituents, and then the other will still have a hydrogen present. Okay, so for this one, let's go ahead. We'll use two methyl groups on this left-hand side of the alkene. And then on the right-hand side, we will use the ethyl group again. And then we will also, we will also have the hydrogen there. So if I use ozonolysis, zinc with acid, hopefully you can see and predict this. I would encourage you to pause the video and try these as we're going along here. Okay, so what I would get is, well, I would get one ketone, specifically acetone, which we saw earlier. That would be from the left-hand portion. And then in the right-hand portion, I would get the aldehyde. So again, splitting down the middle, you should be able to very readily see, right, how I get the aldehyde on the right-hand side here, and I get the acetone or the ketone from the left-hand side. And then, similar to the first example that we kind of walked through with that cyclic compound, if something is tetra-substituted, you're now going to get two ketones. So let's just run through another example where we have a tetra-substituted. So we'll do two methyls over here, and then we can do an ethyl and a methyl over on this side here, right? So now I don't have any hydrogens remaining, which means that aldehydes are no longer going to be a possible outcome. I put my ozonolysis reagents in, and again, see if you can pause the video and predict what would be the two products that would result from this. So what you should get is you're going to have, again, from the left-hand side, your acetone. Okay, and then on the right-hand side, you would end up with a 2-butanone, which would be another ketone. Okay, so those would be the results there. So this really covers ozonolysis. Now, I did mention there was one other method that I wanted to mention here, which is the oxidation method using potassium permanganate, which is KMnO4. You're going to see this reagent used quite often in organic chemistry. It's fairly common for oxidizing when we get into different reactions. Okay, now the alkene oxidation that uses KMnO4 should also occur in acid, the same way we had the zinc with the acid. But these don't need to be broken apart into two separate steps. You can just have KMnO4 in a aqueous acidic solution. Now, this is going to be a bit different in the results, and we'll take a look at an example here. So I have a note here. It says any hydrogens on an alkene, okay, that are present are going to be turned into a carboxylic acid instead of an aldehyde. If there are two hydrogens that are present on a single carbon, on one carbon in that alkene, you will get carbon dioxide as the result instead of an aldehyde. And then if they are fully substituted, you will still get ketones like we saw above. So let's look at an example where we would get something different here. So this time I'll go ahead and I will start with an ethyl group here. I'm going to put the pi bond in. Now here, let's put two hydrogens, okay? So these two hydrogens that we've got here, that side is going to result in carbon dioxide. This side over here, this hydrogen present will turn into a carboxylic acid. So when I expose this here to KMnO4, the potassium permanganate, in acidic conditions, what I will end up with is, from the left side, I will get the corresponding carboxylic acid. So there's the ethyl substituent. Here's my carbonyl. And then that H, instead of being an aldehyde like we saw with ozonolysis, will become a carboxylic acid. Okay, and then over here, instead of formaldehyde, the C double bond O with the two H's, we would end up with CO2 as a result from this particular oxidation. Okay, and again, let's say that, for instance, this was a CH3 instead, then this portionality would just be the corresponding ketone, right? So I don't have that there, but the ketones would work in the same way regarding the KMnO4 oxidation. It would just give you a ketone back. So head on over to chemcomplete.com. Check out those resources. They'll help you out. If you wouldn't mind liking the video, if you found that it was useful in helping you with your studies, that would greatly boost our material in the algorithm. And again, subscribing will always keep you up to date. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I will see everybody in the next lecture. Take care.